Welcome to the Rock Your World Naturally podcast, the place where women from around the world come to discover God's plan for health in body, soul, and spirit. I'm your host, Rakesia McMillan, award-winning author, Air Force veteran, and health evangelist. I'm passionate about sharing biblical truth, scientific research, and practical lifestyle approaches to help heal your world naturally. You're listening to podcast episode 29, my exclusive interview with Barbara J. Hunt, best-selling author of Forgiveness Made Easy, the revolutionary guide to moving beyond your past and truly letting go. In this exclusive interview, best-selling author Barbara J. Hunt shares wisdom about her book, Forgiveness Made Easy, the revolutionary guide to moving beyond your past and truly letting go. She has over 25 years of experience as a mentor, coach, and group facilitator. She's passionate about personal and spiritual evolution and teaches leading-edge tools, perspectives, and techniques that help to make the inner game of being human easier. She currently works as part of the core team of therapists on the UK's leading physical, mental, and emotional health and detox retreat, Vital Detox, based in Southwest England, as well as in private practice with national and international clients. She is also a singer-songwriter who's released 3 CDs of her own songs, and her most recent single is A Song for International Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the show best-selling author, mentor, coach, and singer-songwriter, Barbara J. Hunt.
Thank you very much, Rakesia. I'm so looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, I am as well. I've been so looking forward to this interview, and I know that our guests are going to be enlightened and impacted in a positive way by what it is that you have to share. And usually before we get into the show, Barbara, I start out with an icebreaker question. So if you could let our guests know, what are you doing in your world right now that is simply rocking your world naturally?
Okay. Well, several things, because I am blessed to live in the countryside in England. And so walking in nature every day has been such a blessing. And I feel so much more connected to nature just because I'm listening better and probably spending more time than I would normally under these circumstances. And also I think because there's less traffic, there's more flowers in the hedgerows and the birds seem to be singing louder, and it's very beautiful for that part of my experience right now.
You have just shared one of my favorite pastimes, Barbara. I love getting out in nature, especially in walks. And like you shared, that there is such a connectivity to the earth, to creation, that just helps you to stay focused. It helps you to stay centered. And it's also so therapeutic and healing.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
So, Barbara, one of the things that really just drew me to you is the work that you do in the area of forgiveness. And so many times I come across individuals, whether it's professionally or personally, and there are just things in their lives that they just have not let go of. So can you share a little bit about the work that you do and how you can help individuals, whether it's things that they're holding on to, things that they have not let go of, how it is that you're able to reach them to get beyond that place called stuck?
Oh, that's a great question. I think sometimes one of the troubles with forgiveness is that people don't realize it's that needs to happen. And just like you said, if you're stuck, you're not necessarily going to think that it's your resentment or your grudge or your grievance that's sticking you. And my fascination actually is with why is it that we find it so hard to forgive? Why do we find it such a challenge? Why aren't we able to easily just let things go? You know, why do we hold on to them, and why do we struggle so much to let things go, especially when things, have happened in the past that was such a long time ago that really we might convince ourselves, okay, well, I don't really think about that anymore, and think that we've done something similar to forgiveness, but we haven't really forgiven at all because it comes back up again. So, I mean, I am utterly fascinated by our relationship with forgiveness, what it really means, what it doesn't mean, what are the obstacles to forgiveness, and how can we forgive? Because I genuinely believe that we can, and it's possible for us to forgive anything, regardless of how terrible an event or incident is. That it's possible if you want to and you get the right help, that you can. And also in my experience of having supported people probably over at least 25, if not nearly 30 years, supporting people with their forgiveness processing and the process of forgiveness and the actual experience of forgiveness that I take people through in my work. But I am fascinated by why some people find it very hard, even when the circumstances don't look that challenging, versus some people who have had the most terrible, tragic circumstances, but actually are able to find forgiveness relatively more easily than other people.
I think it's so interesting that you say that, Barbara, that many times when an individual comes to you, they may not even realize that it is that area of forgiveness that needs to be addressed. And so when you begin to do that inner soul work with a person, do you find that there is one commonality or one specific barrier that kind of keeps the blinders on the eyes of people to really not see? Or is it multiple things? Or what have you discovered in your work?
Well, I think it is multiple things. And in my book, Forgiveness Made Easy, I've outlined the 5 biggest obstacles to forgiveness. And then even beyond that, once I've outlined what all of those different 5 obstacles are, I still go ahead and offer even more tips to make it easier for people, because there are places where people get stuck are different places, for sure.
And so, mentioning your book, can you let our guests know where they can actually find you on the internet to get a hold of this resource to really grasp those 5 areas that are outlined in your book to help them to really, whether it's for their own personal life or whether it's for someone that they know? Can you share where they can find you on the web, Barbara?
Yes, of course. So my book is available online from Amazon stores all over the UK and the world and the US. And so all you need to do is type in Forgiveness Made Easy and my name, which is Barbara J. Hunt, because there are other books of the same title, and that is allowed. You can't copyright a book title, but I was very clear that I wanted my book to be seen as something that I could help people, like a manual rather than just sharing stories. Mine is a very practical book. And then also I have a website called forgivenessmadeeasy.co.uk. And that has resources, including actually more information about the book and some blogs and other information.
Great. And I find that the address for your website, Forgiveness Made Easy, and I know that you shared earlier that forgiveness is your favorite subject. It's one of the most misunderstood, underutilized, whether it's personal or spiritual development practices.
Mm-hmm.
You also shared a little bit earlier that you said you believe that it is like a forgotten superpower.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Barbara?
Sure. Yes, I think of it as a superpower because it has the potential to transform everything. And I do mean everything, because when you hold resentment or you haven't forgiven somebody for something, you do hold the tension in your body. And there have been scientific studies done to show the relationship between unresolved emotional incidents and lack of forgiveness and higher stress levels. And as everybody knows, stress can turn up in all sorts of different physical complaints like bad digestion or high blood pressure or a poorer immune system. And actually, I mean, at the moment, having a healthy immune system is probably one of the most essential things you can have. So if there was nothing else that was encouraging you to do your forgiveness work, it might be because it has physiological benefits to you. So that's just one of them. The other benefits are obvious because they do change your relationship with the person or the people who are in your life. And I've watched this a lot, where if somebody is, say they've been really resenting their partner, when they do their forgiveness work, it changes the whole dynamic of the family. Or when you forgive your parent or your child, that it can change not just that relationship, but all the other relationships in your life, because there's less tension held. And then the last but very important potential is ultimately, if you imagine that everybody took this time of quietness and reflection to do their forgiveness work on everyone that they needed to and everything that they needed to, because sometimes we do need to forgive things, sometimes events, or even helicopters, or there may be other more inanimate objects that we also need to do forgiveness work on. If everyone did all of their forgiveness work, then we would have a much, much more peaceful, cooperative, loving, and dare I even say it, potentially move more towards global peace. And that you can't really argue with the maths of that. If people do their forgiveness work, we could create a more peaceful world.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you just hit on so many powerful points in the things that you've shared. And one of the things that you emphasize, that there is a deep relationship, a deep connection between the emotional part of who we are when we're not exercising forgiveness and how that affects our overall health. And so, as you shared, harboring those things can be so detrimental. And so the ability or the opportunity to really do that internal soul work, to work on the forgiveness, is not only freeing for you health-wise, but it is freeing for you in your mind, in your soul, in every aspect of who you are. And then when you reach that area of just releasing and letting go, it not only impacts you in a powerful and a positive way, but it impacts your family, those who you are connected to, impacting our communities, impacting our regions. And as you shared, it can bring about that peace on earth that we all so desperately need and seek and long for on a universal level.
But what's wonderful about it is that we all can do it, even though it's not necessarily going to be easy. We all have the potential to do it. We all can do it if we choose to do it, and that's an amazing thing. Is that it's not like it's something that's out of reach or only available to people of certain creed or color, or it's universally available to all of us, and it can transform our lives. And and it's free relatively. You don't even need to buy the book. You can, there's free resources on my website. So
Absolutely. And so, with the work that you are doing with forgiveness, Barbara, how did you actually follow this pursuit or follow this path to help others to heal in those areas when it comes to forgiveness?
So I work. I have one-to-one clients, and we do work together over a series of weeks where we work through the things that they need to forgive. And for most people, they may come because they know there's one person that they definitely need to forgive, like their spouse or a parent or a child or a colleague. So they usually come for a particular reason. But because we have complex lives, often it's not just one person that you need to forgive. And when I first came across the idea of forgiveness, I was doing a personal development workshop in the 90s, the early 90s, and it was called the Life Training at the time, but they're now called More to Life, and they have their website moretolife.org, O-R-G, and they do personal and spiritual development programs, which are wonderful. And they had us think about all the people that we needed to forgive and write a list. And so I decided at that point, well, I probably resent or have some kind of grudge or grievance about pretty much everybody I've ever met or had a relationship with. So I started my list and I got to 36 before I thought, oh, well, I've put my mum down. I probably resent my mother. And the reason why that was very significant was because I discovered or realized that I had been resenting my mother for being ill because she had multiple sclerosis from when I was very young. And by the time I was in my teens, she was significantly disabled. And so I suddenly had this relationship with forgiveness where I was looking at my behavior, my resentment, and how widespread it was. I could recognize that there were things that I needed to forgive and be forgiven for as well. That's also really important. But it was through the whole of my life. And so when I work with people one-to-one, although we may begin with one person, often there's a network of things that need to be forgiven. And for example, if you're forgiving your spouse, then you may need to also forgive your parents, because that will have set up your emotional relationship patterns. So it's often you end up doing quite a lot of associated work.
And so it's really digging deep and really being honest when it comes down to that personal work that we may have to do to go back, whether it's in our families, whether it's in our communities. And another area that you mentioned that I think was so important, to really looking at areas in our life as a whole where we may not have forgiven, whether that's, again, a parent, a loved one. But you mentioned objects, that if there was an object, can you kind of share a little bit more about that, Barbara?
Yes, it's a funny thing, actually. Where I live is not very far away from an air base, and they have helicopters fly over very low when they're doing their training. And sometimes at night I get woken up because there's a kind of a helicopter hovering in one of the fields nearby. And for a long time, I used to get so angry about it because there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't control it. I could maybe complain about the noise, but there wasn't anything I could do to change the situation. And I felt really angry and resentful. And eventually a friend of mine who is also a forgiveness coach, she was saying, well, I think you need to just put it down on your list. So because I keep a list of, if I notice that I'm carrying resentment or I'm feeling reactive about something, I think, okay, maybe I need to do some work. And so I'll jot it down in the back of a notebook. And so I realized I needed to do some forgiveness work on the helicopters. And then very strangely, because I do try and practice what I preach. So I did my forgiveness work following my own steps on the helicopters. And then honestly and truly, since then, I have been bothered so much less. Not that they come less often, although at the moment they do, but just that it doesn't irritate me with the same level of intensity as it did. And that really, for me, is the power of forgiveness and why I want to do forgiveness, because I don't want to be so hair triggered into reactivity by something that I'm resenting.
And that's so good, because even if we were to take a look at not only the personal connection, but again, whether it's situations or circumstances like the helicopter, where we're harboring those things, and those things can tend to create a weight to where, whether we're heavy, we're carrying these things around and maybe not realizing why we're feeling disconnected or why we are feeling imbalanced. And it could very well be connected to the things that are going on around us in our immediate environment.
Yes, exactly. And I also work on a retreat. Well, before COVID-19, I was working on a retreat, a residential retreat, where we'd have groups of 22-ish people. And it's a health retreat. So people are coming to lose weight, but also to do deep emotional work, because there's a really wonderful, powerful combination when you do those things together. And people would honestly, they would come because they wanted to lose weight, as in pounds, but because they were doing such deep emotional work, they were realizing that the true weight that they were losing was the weight in their hearts, just as you're describing. And I remember working with a woman who was in her 70s, who had been abused as a child, and she said at the end of the retreat, all of that bad feeling that I was carrying in my chest has gone. And she was feeling every day, even decades later.
And that's so good, Barbara, because the aches, the pains that are held within the body that are due to that emotional baggage that we're carrying, those things could truly stem from that. And that example that you gave is just so beautiful, because here a woman was all her life. She's lived, half of a century, 70 years old, and she had the opportunity to release that. And it was noticeable to her that that pain, that weight that she had carried all those years from her childhood, she was able to let that go.
Yes, and that was the extraordinary thing, is it's almost like the forgiveness, it will release anything, even if you think, oh, it's such a long time ago, there's no point in me doing it. It's almost like these things wait for our merciful attention, and when we give our merciful attention, and the way I work with people is it's like a ritual, the forgiveness, or even like if you have a spiritual faith, it's like a sacrament, because it's holy work. You're really choosing to choose love, holding on to your resentment, and so you're able to let go of anything, no matter how long ago it happened. There's a real grace to it.
And one of the things that you shared, Barbara, that ties in so beautifully to that is the definition of forgiveness by K. Bradford Brown. And it says, forgiveness is the absolute refusal to hold ill will against someone for what they did or didn't do.
Yes.
That is such a powerful definition, and I'm sure that you use it so much in your work.
Yes, and in fact, I use it. It's as the first obstacle is not understanding what forgiveness is. So K. Bradford Brown's definition is like the answer to how you get over that obstacle is to have a definition that works. And what I really like about it is it's active. It's you are the one who is absolutely refusing to hold the ill will. And I love the fact that it's absolute. It's not partial or conditional. It's absolute refusal to hold ill will. And that is absolutely in your control.
And so being in control and making the choice to say, I'm no longer going to hold this, whatever that was, against someone that harmed me, hurt me, abused me, even if it was something in the environment. You refuse to allow that to enter into, I like to say, that sacred space of your heart, and willing just to let that go.
Yes, exactly.
And so, Barbara, you are located in the UK, and I know with things that are going on with the coronavirus, COVID-19 in our world right now, that being in this type of situation, not only in the regions that we live in, but globally, provides an opportunity for individuals to work on themselves personally in a very deep, in a very real way. So for our guests that are listening today that want to be able to work with you, can you share a little bit about your services? Can they connect with you virtually, via phone? How can they get in touch with you, Barbara?
Yes, they can get in touch on my website, on the forgivenessmadeeasy.co.uk website. There's a little contact form, and they can just send me a message. And I do work via Skype. I work internationally and have done for a long time, even before this. But Skype or Zoom also I work over, and also the telephone if you prefer. So it's very flexible in terms of how you can actually work with me. And yeah, so if anyone's interested in doing one-to-one work, then they can just get in touch with me. And also you can read the book first and see whether or not you like what I'm saying and whether or not that resonates for you, if that's a preference.
And can you share the title of your book with our audience again, Barbara?
Yes, it's called Forgiveness Made Easy. And the little strap line is The Revolutionary Guide to Moving Beyond Your Past and Truly Letting Go.
Outstanding. Barbara, it has truly been my pleasure to be able to host you on the show today. Are there any parting words regarding forgiveness?
Well, I would like to share my vision. So Bill Gates had a vision of a computer on every desk. I have a vision of forgiveness in every heart. And that I would just like everyone to see their forgiveness as acts of amnesty for humanity. So your forgiveness matters not just to you, but for all of us. And so if you have any interest in forgiveness, or that you know that there's something that you need to forgive, however secretly you've kept that, then I would just really encourage you to do your forgiveness work. Start a list, write down the names of the people and things you need to forgive, and get going.
Powerful. And again, Barbara, it has been my pleasure to host you on today. And I truly, truly believe in the work that you're doing. And I know that you're making a great difference. And so many lives are being transformed. They're being changed by the message of forgiveness. So thank you so much for the work that you do. And I wish you well in all of your future endeavors.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
God bless. For health tips, faith-based education, and inspiration, visit www.rockyourworldnaturally.com and on Facebook at Facebook.com/rockyourworldnaturally and Twitter at twitter.com/rockyourworld28.